Hi, I'm attorney Gregory Dell with the law firm of Dell Schaefer, and I'm here with Jason Macri. How are you, Jason?
Great, Gregory. How are you?
Good. And I want to talk to you about, we're seeing a lot of car accidents with Uber drivers, and obviously Uber's become incredibly popular where tons and tons of people are using the service on a regular basis, and taxi cabs are becoming not a thing of the past, but clearly not used as much due to the great convenience of Uber. But one of the greatest concerns is, what kind of insurance coverage is there if, God forbid, you're in an accident with an Uber driver, whether the Uber driver caused the accident or someone else caused the accident? Is it your own insurance? Is it the Uber insurance? And what should people know about being in an accident with an Uber driver?
Uber has what they would claim is best-in-class type of coverage. What they would mean by that is that it's pretty significant coverage compared to taxi cabs. Unfortunately, taxi cabs these days have very, very minimal coverage compared to Uber. They might have in the very low hundreds of thousands of dollars in bodily injury coverage, but Uber has $1 million bodily injury coverage policy. And they also have $1 million uninsured motorist policy as well. But there are a lot of caveats to when their policy actually kicks in and actually would provide coverage. A lot of different rules, a lot of different loopholes and caveats.
All right, so let me throw you some simple examples. Typical ride, it's Friday night, you decide to take an Uber, and the Uber driver rear-ends somebody while you're a passenger. Who is going to be the responsible party in that situation, and what type of potential coverage would be available for you as the passenger?
So in that situation, the Uber driver is at fault for this crash. They rear-ended somebody else. So there is $1 million in bodily injury coverage for that type of crash. So if a person is a passenger in an Uber vehicle and then that Uber vehicle causes a crash, there will be $1 million in bodily injury coverage for the person that's in the Uber vehicle that becomes injured.
Okay, and if someone is watching this video, they just had an accident recently with Uber, how are you able to assist them?
So, of course, what we do is we meet with those people and find out exactly what happened. We would need to know exactly what happened as far as, was the person a passenger in an Uber vehicle? Were they injured by an Uber driver in some other way? Because there are going to be different rules that apply in those situations. Hypothetically, let's just use an example of, say, a person is walking across the street and they get struck by an Uber driver. In that situation, we would need to know, was the Uber driver on their way to pick up some people? Were they just sort of driving around looking for people to pick up? Because their bodily injury, the $1 million bodily injury policy won't kick in if the Uber driver had not accepted a ride and was either on their way to pick up some passengers or had some passengers in the vehicle. If the Uber driver had no ride that they had accepted and they were simply just sort of driving around town, well then that $1 million Uber policy is not going to kick in.
Okay, so let me give you another scenario. Potential clients driving to work, they cross an intersection, an Uber driver runs the red light and hits what would potentially be our client. The Uber driver is clearly at fault. Our client's the person who got hit by the Uber driver. What kind of coverage is going to be available for our client?
If at that moment the Uber driver either had some passengers in the vehicle with them or had accepted a ride and was on their way to actually pick up some passengers, there would be $1 million in bodily injury coverage. If the Uber driver had not been doing that and was just simply driving around and had not accepted a ride, then we would have to make a claim against that Uber driver's bodily injury policy on their own auto insurance policy.
Okay, and was there a requirement that Uber makes these drivers have?
There is no requirement that Uber makes these drivers have, but there is something that Uber does have, and it's a $50,000 bodily injury policy in that exact situation. So just to go over it briefly again, in a situation where an Uber driver is not carrying passengers and has not accepted a ride, if they injure somebody else, and if that Uber driver's personal auto insurance refuses to provide any coverage, then Uber will provide a $50,000 bodily injury coverage in that situation.
So in a worst case scenario, a potential client would be covered up to $50,000 by someone who just is employed by or works for Uber. Now it seems like there's going to be a lot of litigation developing. Obviously, if the Uber driver has a passenger, no brainer, they were working within the scope of Uber. but whether or not they were picking someone up or going for another job, or what about the fact that they're just sitting around, driving around waiting for that next ding on their phone to say, I'm ready for a ride? How do you distinguish minute by minute to say you weren't waiting for passengers when that person on a day in, day out basis is working from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day? It doesn't seem fair to me that it's just, 2 minutes ago you dropped someone off and you don't have another job, but guess what? 3 minutes after your accident, your phone just rang and you had an accident. Are you getting into those nuances in terms of when this potential coverage kicks in?
Absolutely, and this is where technology comes into play, because as soon as an Uber driver accepts a ride, it's literally something that they click on their phone or on their device, and it's something that has a timestamp associated with it. So we're always able to determine when an Uber driver has accepted a ride or was not in a situation where they had accepted a ride or had some passengers, because of technology and because of the device's ability to put an exact timestamp on the acceptance of a ride. We're always able to determine whether an Uber driver had accepted a ride or not.
Now Uber is so new. The scenario I just gave you where this person, has a history, will know when they're driving, most days 9 to 5. And I know Uber wants to say to the driver, hey, we're only going to cover you, between this time if you accept a ride or don't accept a ride. But does the law really allow for that? Meaning that person is considered working for Uber at that particular time just because Uber wrote that in their insurance company. If you were to actually file a lawsuit against Uber, isn't it possible that Uber's still on the hook regardless of what they're saying? Hey, we're only going to cover if you were actually picking up a ride or, in the process of passengers?
It is possible that they're on the hook, and so of course we could always sue Uber if we needed to and litigate a case against them, but their insurance policy is very specific, and their insurance company, James River, will cover them only in certain situations and will not provide coverage in others. And so in a situation where we do sue Uber, if according to their policy they need not apply coverage, then they may file something called a Dec Action, a declaratory action, in order to be able to get a judge to take a look at this policy and determine when the policy will apply and when the policy will not apply. But of course, this is all something that we would need to litigate and actually bring to court.
And I think this is an issue that gets into whether or not an Uber driver is an independent contractor or an employee of Uber. And I think those decisions, there hasn't necessarily been a big decision that's come down in Florida yet that I'm aware of. However, in other states, this issue, has come up, and that would make, because if they are an employee, then Uber is going to be responsible regardless. If they're an independent contractor at that particular time, then Uber could potentially be off the hook. So totally like a new body of law developing here as we go through. The bottom line is, if you're involved in any type of accident with Uber driver, whether you're a passenger or in your own car or a pedestrian or whatever, give any of our attorneys a call. We'll always offer you a free initial consultation. We'll investigate the case 100%, and we'll be able to let you know immediately from that first phone call whether or not we're able to help you with your claim.